Soaring oil prices are increasing the cost of everything. Energy market volatility drives up prices for everything from Uber rides to toys. Hey guys, welcome back to another interesting episode of Value Add Guy. Today, we'll be discussing the impact of high fuel prices on the global economy. So shall we start? Before we start, don't forget to thumbs up. Also make sure to subscribe to our channel and don't forget to turn on the post notifications to not miss out on any future updates. During the pandemic in 2020, lockdowns caused the prices of oil to fall below zero for the first time in history due to a significant drop in economic activity. Following a solid economic rebound following the lockdowns, oil prices have climbed substantially to nearly $100 per barrel. Oil demand rises in tandem with the economy. Furthermore, escalating geopolitical tensions in the Middle East and between Russia and Ukraine are fueling supply concerns. This contributes to the rising prices and economic recovery concerns. Petroleum products can be found in everything from personal protective equipment, plastics, chemicals and fertilizers to medicines, clothing, transportation fuel, and even solar panels, accounting for about 3% of global GDP. A global trend towards sustainability could someday modify oil demand's poor price elasticity. However, as the energy transition proceeds, it's critical to comprehend how supply and demand considerations affect the price of oil and, by extension, the economy. Oil is currently trading at around $100 per barrel. What is the source of this price increase and why is oil so volatile? Nobody has a crystal ball. Things could move completely in the opposite direction tomorrow. The only constant in the oil market appears to be change and volatility. However, it's generally safe to argue that there are three major causes behind this. Number one, oil demand is being driven by strong economic growth. When COVID-19 began 2 years ago, economic activity and oil demand plummeted. Producers adjusted their output levels, but there's only so much that can be done without destroying reservoirs of capital. Additionally, storage space is limited. Furthermore, it was unclear how severe the economic downturn would be and how long it would endure. These forces combined to propel oil prices to heights not seen in decades. Oil prices even dropped to a negative $40 for a brief time. It was followed by an unexpected economic recovery which boosted demand for oil and oil products. Oil demand is expected to have returned to or has already surpassed pre-pandemic levels. Number two, oil supply is limited due to protracted investment cycles and conservative capital allocations. Supply has not been able to keep up with rising demand. OPEC has been gradually increasing oil output, but it has limited spare capacity and is likely wary of oversupplying the market again. Oil production, aside from spare capacity, has extremely long investment cycles. From the time the resources are proven, it can take up to a decade to reach initial production. Although some unusual resources can offer production significantly faster, their scale is limited. Furthermore, all producers are cautious in their capital allocation. They first learned from an oversupplied market when oil prices plummeted to negative $40. Furthermore, and perhaps more importantly, the sector is under pressure not to explore new fields, to hold or reduce investment in maintaining and developing output, and to redirect cash to green ventures. Number three, tensions in geopolitics. Oil market jitters are exacerbated by geopolitical tensions between Russia and Ukraine as well as rising instability in the Middle East. On a micro level, how do oil prices affect the economy? You may already be aware of the microeconomic repercussions of increasing oil prices as a customer. When we see increasing oil prices, we are inclined to think about the price of gasoline as well because most homes require fuel purchases. When gasoline costs rises, households are most likely to spend a higher portion of their budgets on fuel, having less money for other goods and services. The same is true for firms that must ship items from one location to another that rely heavily on fuel, such as the airline industry. Higher oil prices makes it more expensive for enterprises to produce, just as they make it more expensive for households to undertake their routine activities. It turns out that the price of oil and gasoline are inextricably linked. The two variables follow each other closely over time. Rising oil prices are followed by rising gasoline prices. Furthermore, monthly variations in oil and gasoline prices are strongly and positively associated. As a result, if oil prices rise, gasoline prices will rise as well, affecting the costs incurred by the vast majority of consumers and companies. What is the impact of oil prices on the macroeconomy? It's not a big leap to comprehend how they affect the macroeconomy. Increases in oil prices are expected to raise inflation and slow down economic growth. Oil prices have a direct impact on the prices of goods created with petroleum products in terms of inflation. Oil prices, as previously said, have an indirect impact on costs such as transportation, production, and heating. The rise in these expenses may have an impact on the prices of a variety of goods and services, as companies may pass on higher production costs to consumers. The extent to which higher oil prices translate to higher consumer prices is determined by how crucial oil is in the production of a particular good or service. Increases in oil prices can also impede economic growth by affecting the supply and demand for items other than oil. Increases in oil prices can reduce the availability of other items by raising the expense of production. High oil prices in economic terms can push up the supply curve for goods and services that use oil as an input. High crude prices can also lower demand for other items by reducing wealth and instilling worry about the future. One approach to think about the implications of increasing oil prices is to consider them a tax on consumers. Imported oil is the most straightforward example. Consumers in the United States may no longer use the extra money that they pay to foreign oil producers to buy other items. Despite the supply and demand implications, the link between rising oil prices and economic downturns in the United States is not perfect. Not every significant spike in oil prices has been followed by a recession. 5 of the last 7 US recessions, however, were preceded by significant increases in oil prices. What effect do rising oil prices have on inflation, and what does this entail for the global economy? Oil accounts for 3% of global GDP, so if 3% of world GDP becomes twice as expensive tomorrow, definitely inflation will be affected. However, we do not believe it is a major driver of inflation. We believe that tax monetary policies are the primary cause of inflation. Oil prices will not be the most important element in inflation in this setting, but they will still be significant. Why? Because oil is in practically everything. It doesn't have a volumetric influence, but it does have an impact on pricing. A spike in oil prices will not only be felt at the petrol station, but in almost all of the goods and services we use. Oil is a feedstock, a source of energy, and it is used to convey a variety of goods. People prefer to think that the expense of filling up their car in terms of inflation, but what people not understand about oil prices? What are the charges beyond the gas station? When it comes to oil as a source of energy, taxes account for 50 to 60% of what consumers pay at the pump, depending on where they live. We tend to focus on crude oil price fluctuations, which are essential, but what most people don't realize is that for every 1.5 euros spent on a liter of gasoline, they pay the government 70 to 80 cents. Taxing oil makes more money for importing countries like the European Union than benefiting exporting countries. It's a true zero-sum game. There is a movement in income between oil-producing and oil-consuming countries as supply fluctuates. Is the current rise in oil prices a one-time blip or a long-term trend? If that's the case, how would it influence the world economy? Oil prices will fluctuate in the long run. Predicting the level of prices much alone the direction of change is extremely difficult. In any event, oil prices will remain at $100 or above for a while, but not indefinitely. Because in the medium run, supply should catch up to demand growth, with geopolitical tensions presumably easing. In the long run, demand will level off and at some time begin to decline. Then there is the issue of increased oil prices. However, there is a risk of large transient rises to even greater levels than we are seeing now, perhaps $150 to $200. Temporary oil price spikes are highly likely if the energy transition is not a coordinated effort between demand-side changes and supply-side adjustments. Due to the extremely long investment cycles required to produce oil, forcing supply curtailment without modifying demand will generate fundamental imbalances that will be difficult to address. As we transition, there is pressure to stop investing in oil production, but we must recognize that we also require the supply. So between now and 2050, we must achieve this balance with the energy shift. The aim is not to undercut the transition. Rather, consumers, both individual and industrial, must lead the demand side of the shift. It is a duty that we all must do, not just big oil. Otherwise, the risk is that the future will be rather unpredictable. What are your views on rising oil prices? Do let us know in the comment section below. Subscribe for more content just like this one and share it with your friends. Also, don't forget to smash that like button and also press the bell icon to get notified about our new videos. Until then.